If you asked anyone in Umuode village what kind of water Chike had in his blood, they would tell you, without blinking, that it was the stubborn kind. Not just stubborn, but the kind that refuses to mix with soup. It stands separate, oily, and useless. Chike was his parents' greatest blessing and their most persistent headache. He was quick-witted, with a smile that could melt butter, but his feet, oh, his feet were enemies of the school path. Every morning, the sun would rise, and every morning, a new war would start in their compound. His father, Obinna, a kind man whose back was bent from years of honest farming, would shout until his throat was sandpaper. His mother, Ngozi, a woman whose patience was as wide as the Iroko tree, would plead until her voice was a tired whisper. But Chike's mind was not on history or arithmetic. It was to enjoy life. My people. He used his school hours to sit around the village and play games, laugh at people passing by, chase animals till he was tired, and then end the day at the river across the village. He knew every shallow spot where the fishes came to dance, and every mango tree that hung low with ripe fruit. The school bell was a nuisance. The river's call was a song. Obinna had sacrificed his last goat to pay the school fees, saying, "My son will read books, not just read the clouds like me." Yet, every day, Chike played truant. He would leave the house with his neat uniform, wave goodbye like a dutiful son, and then duck into the bush. He would shed his school clothes, wrap himself in a dirty sack, and spend the day fishing or chasing butterflies, returning home only when the evening darkness could hide the dust and the mischievous shine in his eyes. He thought he was smart, but a fool who fools only himself is the biggest fool of all. The school teachers noticed his absence and sent word home, but Chike would intercept the message children and silence them with sweet kokoro snacks. One day, however, the headmaster himself sent a stern note through an older, unbribable student. Ngozi read the note, and her usual patience snapped like dry firewood. When Obinna returned from the farm, smelling of sweat and earth, he was met not with his dinner, but with the crisp, accusing paper. The earth seemed to spin. All the money, all the hope, all the daily scolding, it was for nothing. His heart felt heavy, like a stone dropped in a deep well. He did not shout. He simply picked up his walking stick, a thick, gnarled piece of wood he usually reserved for chasing away stray goats. "Where is Chike?" he asked, but he already knew the answer. He marched straight across the stream. The sun was hot, biting the skin, but the father did not feel it. He felt only the betrayal of a son who would trade his future for a few hours of play. He walked with a speed that surprised his old knees. He saw the flash of the Chike's hair far ahead, near the reeds where the river was widest. Chike, seeing his father's furious approach, knew this was not a normal scolding. His instinct, the same stubbornness that kept him from school, told him to run. Chike saw the stick and the determined fire in his father's eyes, and panic gave wings to his feet. He ran straight towards the riverbank. Chike was familiar with its moods of the river during the time the sun is about to set. He ran across while splashing into the water with practiced ease. He didn't look back. He simply aimed to get to the other side and then run to Mama Ngozi. But the sound behind him was not the splash of an angry father. It was the heavier, labored sound of a man who was not built for the water. Obinna, blinded by a potent mix of anger and disappointment, plunged straight into the river after his son. Obinna was a man of the land, not the water. His feet found no solid footing. The current began to pull. He thrashed, his stick falling away, his arms flailing against the invisible, strong hands of the river. Chike reached the safety of the sand patch and finally turned to watch his father. What he saw was not the furious disciplinarian he knew, but an old, struggling man whose face was twisted with terror, his head barely above the brown, churning water. Chike became desperate, scared, and his heart racing out of fear. All the days of disobedience, all the hours of calculated mischief, evaporated in that one terrifying moment. He saw his father's open hand, reaching for anything solid, his eyes wide and pleading not with anger, but with sheer fear. Chike, the boy who refused to learn, suddenly had the sharpest lesson placed before him. Disobedience does not just punish the child, it drowns the father. Without thinking, the boy who knew the river better than he knew his school books plunged back in. He didn't swim towards the bank. He swam straight to the deepest part, towards the struggling body of the man he had almost killed. Chike used his whole body, light and agile, from countless hours of play, to fight the current. He grabbed his father and pulled with a desperate strength he didn't know he possessed. When they finally collapsed on the damp sand, Chike did not look at his father's face. He looked at his own wet hands. They were trembling. He had used his knowledge of the river, his strength, and his agility, not to escape, but to save. And the act felt heavier and more real than any playground victory. And for at that moment, he was thankful that his father was alive. If you are still here, kindly subscribe to Stories of Africa. Let us continue, my people. They did not speak on the slow, wet walk back to the village. Oh, the entire village watched them return Ngozi's scream when she saw her husband and son looking sad. She rushed them inside, treating Obina with hot cloths and bitter herbs, while Chike sat silently, still wrapped in the blanket of shame and relief. The next morning, Obina was too weak to sit up, but he was alive. Chike had already begun doing chores. He cleaned his father's boots and tools. He swept the entire compound and even fed the animals. He did not go to the river that whole Saturday and Sunday. On Monday, before the rooster crowed, Chike had put on his clean school uniform, picked up his bag, and started walking to school. He walked straight to the school gates, greeted the headmaster politely, and took his seat. He listened to the teacher's words, as if they were water to a long-parched soil. He had tasted the bitter fruit of disobedience, and it had almost cost him the man who held the sun and moon for him. That day, Chike did not just start going to school. He understood truly why school was important. As soon as he came home, he did his homeworks as fast as possible and read some books until he slept peacefully. My people, all I am trying to say is this: stubbornness is only strength when it is aimed at the right thing. The consequences of our actions are not always carried by us alone.